Welcome back to the channel where we address real field repairs for real paying customers. That way, what we demonstrate has some relevance to what you are likely to encounter in your work. Now, this video is in response to the question about what do we do when there's oil in the headrest of residential furniture, and we encounter a problem when trying to remove it. We encounter a problem if we're trying to dye over that. We know that over time, sometimes it can get sticky again. So I don't have all of the answers, but you'll be glad to know I've encountered the same problem, of course. And so there's a workaround in the furniture that we're about to present. And at the conclusion, I think we need to address really, in these days and times, if we advertise that we repair furniture, are we really ready? Are we really set up? Or do we need to evaluate how we're set up to deal with the furniture and maybe retool, reorganize? So let's get to it. Well, we have two couches, both of which have faded considerably where they were exposed to the sun. They were both positioned in front of huge glass windows, but you can see there is some good color down below. The second one is not quite as bad, but still some fading on the seat cushions. So it looked to be a pretty straightforward job. Clean them and re-dye. Well, not so simple after all. Now, when preparing the color for a job like this, I usually get out all of my red pigments and analyze them by this good leather right here. And in this case, the three pigments that are going to come into play are this maroon, which you can see is a bluish kind of a red, and that is very close to our target. I have something on either side, though, of the maroon. I have the true red, which is more orangey. If we want the red to pop out a little bit more out of the blue, we can add that. If it turns out that in our mixture we do need it darker than the maroon, then we have our violet or purple. So that's going to be our value controller. Actually, the true red, being it's a little lighter, will also be our value controller for lightness. So this is what I've gotten for my first test. And as it turns out, I'm going to go with this. I'm going to wipe it in, spray it on. And in doing so, I really consider it like a primer that we can adjust at any time. Meanwhile, we'll speed through the cleaning and prepping, which we're going to do, of course, for both. We're just showing the one. Now it's time to wipe in that first color. And what the color consists of, 80% of it is the leather base, and the 20% is the pigment. Because the cushions are so soft, we're adding a flex additive because now the leather will flex considerably. And of course, don't forget the cross-linker. So we've got both couches primed with our wipe-in color. Now, quite often after the wipe-in, I want to go back with some 400 sandpaper to make sure that I have a perfectly smooth surface for the spraying. But before I can proceed with that step, I've noticed that the headrest area on one end of the couch is gummy. There is something in here there is some oil or some substance that is gummy, and I've noticed it only now that I've put the color on. Didn't notice it before during the prep step that it was objectionable. So the objective here is to clean it back down, and let's see if we can take care of this residue. So after re-prepping, I'm going to go back with a good dose of an industrial degreaser. This is intended to be left on the leather for a time. So we'll put it on there and let it absorb all the oils out that it will. And over time it turns whitish, and we'll have to check and see how we're doing. So I've left it overnight, and now it's time to clean up all of the residue. We're going to clean the surface up nicely and get that ready then for some color. Again, everything looks better, and so I think we're good to go. So our first sprayed in color looks a lot better now. We're getting some depth of color. As you know, red is fairly translucent, so you don't really know what you have until you get about 3 coats on there. But this is coming out nice for the first sprayed coat. And a little bit later, our second spray coat. The clear coat is again our high gloss base with some flex additive, with cross linker, and with a slip additive. That slip additive really helps to sell the job because, as you know, the first thing people do on seeing the furniture, they want to feel it. And if it feels good, you're good to go. So you might think, hey, these couches are ready to be delivered now. No, that wasn't to be the case. And here arises the question that we've received from our viewers that after some days, sometimes these headrests get sticky and gummy, and that's exactly what happened here again. Everything appeared fine except after a few days. Now, it was over 100 degrees in the shop during that time. So we had to go back and revisit that headrest, and let's see what we found. So we cleaned it way down again, and this time we're taking even more of the original darker color. You can see the 2 layers here, the lighter and the darker. So we've taken off more of the original color. I've sent these 2 pictures to the customer because we're going to be delayed now. The second couch, perfect. Second couch, right on. But the first couch, I sent her this picture and I said, we're having trouble with the headrest, and we're going to revisit that and see if we can correct that. I will need it for several more days or even a week. And the customer was fine with that. I'm going to retreat this headrest with another degreaser that has baking soda as one of its components. Again, needing to leave that on there so that it absorbs whatever oils and so forth are impregnated into the leather. So after that treatment, things aren't looking too bad. All of the dark original color is gone for the most part, down to the base color. But if we go over to the right here, we find a spot right here where it's gummy again. And it's a little bit sticky, but mostly just gummy. Something is still in there. And you can see here that whatever is in this leather is serious business. And I have a clue from the past. You will enjoy the view of this headrest in a car. Look at what's piled on that headrest and on this seat. Can you believe it? It's gummed up. And the clue to that was in the car. That waxy buildup was hairspray. So this person got in their car every day, sprayed their hair, and over time just built up this thickness of hairspray that it was impossible to remove. So what's in the hairspray? There is my old arch enemy, glycerin. Now, in the past, we've seen people using saddle soap on their pigmented leather, which is not intended, but often saddle soap will contain glycerin. It'll be advertised on the can. And that glycerin just cannot be removed, it doesn't seem. And you can also not dye over top of it without having similar problems as we have on this couch. So based on my experience with the saddle soap issue and this glycerin in the headrest of this car, I could guess that perhaps the issue on our couch is the same. And my experience with natural hair oils in the headrest tells me that that really isn't the problem. The problem is something added, because this problem doesn't happen all the time. In fact, it's rare. In fact, it probably occurs where women would tend to sit on the couch. In fact, that is where the lady of the house sat, on this couch. So what was the workaround? I went old school and put leather sealer down on just this portion of the headrest, and I made my color from the same solvent system that I use for marine vinyl. And we ended up keeping the couches for 2 more weeks anyway, since the lady's house was being remodeled, and we had no further problems. And was I glad to be done with that one. And so what is the takeaway from this project? Well, one takeaway is that plan A doesn't always work. But we don't always know what we're working against, do we? Similar with people who do stain removal, you don't necessarily know what's causing the stain, but you try different chemicals, and when you finally find a chemical that releases the stain, then you can make a guess as far as what caused it to begin with. And we did something similar here in the case of this couch. But certainly you don't want to have this occur in a residence where you have to go back and then you have a dilemma because you don't really have a plan of action for when you have this problem. So does that mean then that this kind of a furniture thing would have to happen in a shop? You'd need a shop location. It could very well mean that. We get away with certain kinds of repairs in a residence, but maybe this is one that we shouldn't trust to doing it in the residence. In fact, I've been making it also a standard practice when I bring furniture to the shop and refinish it. I don't deliver it right away. I want that finish to cure before the customer mistreats it again. And so because of that, I was also aware of this problem that recurred in the headrest. So thankfully I caught that, and thankfully I had time also to repair it and then see how that worked out, and then everything actually turned out extremely well, as you could see. The other thing too that bears mentioning is if we have to refinish with a solvent in a residence, that can be a real problem nowadays. People are not going to overlook the fact that this off-gassing is occurring in their house. People have health problems, people have emotional problems, and this any amount of solvents in the home probably is not going to be tolerated very well now in our time. If I do have to spray solvents, though, I always request from the homeowner first. And sometimes we can up the air conditioner and get air circulating and get out of the house all these noxious fumes, and still try to keep the amount of solvent to a minimum. And if they agree to it, then fine. But I've had occasions where the child has asthma, and of course you can't, risk the life of the child in that circumstance. So if we can transport that to the shop, then we're better off. Of course, now the issue of transporting is another one, because to get a moving company to move a piece of furniture, of course, is way too expensive. They usually have to pay 2 people a minimum of 2 hours, so there's 4 man-hours involved, which is going to be maybe more than the cost of actually refurbishing the furniture. So it might behoove you to make arrangements. Now, I happen to have a cargo van, so that might be something you could think about investing in. That's very helpful. But there are other workarounds too. Maybe the customer has a friend with a pickup truck, or maybe they could borrow a trailer, something like that. Now, these 2 couches were delivered to me by the homeowner on a brand new horse trailer. So I didn't have to cart them back and forth. So that was very nice of them. Otherwise, I would have had to make 2 trips with the cargo van. So, but not everybody can have a shop location either. Here again, that might be beyond your circumstance, to have a shop location. But for just such furniture, maybe you could temporarily rent or borrow a space from someone that you know. Or even if you had your own power on your vehicle, you could even do it maybe in a storage locker area. So those are some things to think about going into the future, because we don't want to be caught with these problems, within the residence and have the fumes and so forth. So I think that's about the wrap up of that. I hope that this helped you see one way that you could work around this problem with these oils or this glycerin, which I really strongly feel was impregnated into the leather on this headrest. Thanks for watching.